All right, guys.
nothing.
Well, before I let Wesley do his take, I forgot to push the right button, so we weren't actually streaming. We were talking. I was recording. I wasn't actually streaming. So now we're streaming, and we're bringing you another episode of the Spurs Takeover. So let me go ahead and introduce again Wesley Perkins, who is joining us, our lovely co-host here. But before we started the show, we just wanted to make sure that we give our thoughts and prayers to the Kobe Bryant's family during this tragic event. It's a solemn day in the sports world here. Everybody's in shock, and as I had stated before we came on air, I don't even know how the players were able to go out and perform and actually play a game. It's a somber day here in the NBA, but as we were stating, the Spurs fell behind by 19 points, and they actually came all the way back to make a game of it. They got the lead at, I think they were leading by as many as 8 points, but fortunately in the fourth quarter, their inconsistencies, both offensively and defensively, were too much to overcome, and they could not get the much needed win, and they lose two in a row. Observations in tonight's game, Wesley?
Well, again, just to reiterate what you were saying, nothing prepares you as a parent. You don't know what your daily life. We all sit and think about what we do every day and how just routine it is. And I'm sure that the Bryant family today was looking forward to just a normal day. And Kobe and his daughter just that tragically losing their life is just, it's something that, as a spouse, I'm sure his spouse is just devastated. And my prayers go out to them as well. I mean, that is something that is more important than anything. Life is important. And basketball and sports are awesome, but they're not the end all be all. So I also just, wanted to shout out a little bit about, all those years of watching Spurs versus Lakers basketball that, those years were so great to watch Kobe and Tim. And I know that the current players, especially DeMar, growing up in California, has got to just be, it's just got to be gut wrenching at this point. So observations about the game today, it's obviously both teams were a little out of it to start the game. You kind of figured as much. You figured that would happen. But in the end, I thought that the Spurs settled in. I thought the Raptors really were on fire. Siakam was something else in that first half. And you saw DeMar and really LaMarcus kind of struggled today. And I think just with a heavy heart, I think that was more of it than anything. But, Joe, I was going to tell you this. Who has been pushing for Derek and DeJounte to play at the same time? Seems like a certain guy here has been pushing for
I think
that.
we all have. We all have.
Yeah, and we see that the benefit of doing that, and they made a strong run, got themselves back in the game, took that pretty sizable lead, and unfortunately just didn't quite get over the hump in the fourth quarter. More of the same though, and we've seen inconsistency after inconsistency. When they need to have a rebound, they don't get it. When they need an assist, they're need to pass the ball to an open man, they miss that opportunity. And just saw that time and time again in the fourth quarter where the wrong play kind of cost them, or not getting a loose ball or not getting a chance to extend a play. It's just, it's pretty, pretty much what we've been seeing. And I'm gonna just throw you a big question right away here, Joe. So the Spurs got it to within 3 games of 500, right? We know the rodeo road trip's looming soon. Yeah, DeMar DeRozan, trade deadline coming up. And you don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season. He's a free agent. He has the chance to opt in if he wants. So that's going to be my question. If we don't want to answer that now, just something to think about is, as it's starting to get that way and the Spurs start looking farther and farther, it's going to get harder and harder to keep in that playoff contention. Do they start to look at what they can still get while they can for DeMar DeRozan?
Yeah, no, the Spurs aren't gonna make a trade at the trade deadline. They're probably gonna just roll with this current iteration of the team they have right now, and I don't see them making any trades for DeMar DeRozan. The trade deadline is shortly coming up here. I believe if they were gonna really make a trade, they would have already pulled the trigger on that deal already. I don't foresee them doing anything. They're gonna stand pat, no matter how much. Spurs fans are clamoring for them to make a trade and get the team much better. Nothing will happen. The trade deadline will come and go, and there will be no fanfare to report.
Well,
no news
what,
to
Joe?
report.
I'm just going to say this. I think I was listening to the Blue Collar Sports ad today, and I think he's right. I think that they could build this team easily around DeMar. I mean, I think he's the better piece to build around. And unfortunately, LaMarcus has, so on again, off again, and, struggles at times. But, I wanted to throw that out there. I just know the trade deadline is coming up pretty quick, and whether they make a move, whether somebody like DeMarre Carroll or Bryn Forbes or somebody like that gets traded, it might be something small, but I agree with you. I don't know that they're going to make a giant move. But again, today was just another day where we saw those inconsistencies, where there's definitely not enough on this team right now to push it over the hump, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, at least not right now. There's really nothing. There's really nothing that's gonna happen. And I've been today has had me so rattled. I'm only going live on Facebook. I can't even believe that I forgot to even change the titles, and we're not even going live on any of our other channels because stupid me, didn't push the button to make it live on the other platforms. So they're just getting us live here on Facebook only. Oh well.
You're just saving everybody seeing my ugly mug and my unshaven scruff. That's all.
Right. That's about it. Yeah, but unfortunately, the Spurs just haven't played consistent. I was at the game on Friday when they were playing the Suns, and I watched the team just come down the court at least 4 or 5 times, running the same offensive set. And what they were doing is that they were just crowding everybody. The floor spacing was horrible at that game, and it seemed like it continued tonight as well. What they did is they ran down the court, and if I'm going left and right, on the left side of the court, they were just crowding that area. They had like four players bunched together on that end of the court, and they had one lone guy out on the right side near the corner, just camping out there in case they could get him opened for a 3. But the ball was just sticking. It wasn't really moving. Bad things happen when the ball sticks. There wasn't really a lot of help, and I could see that again in this game as well. Help did come, but at the time that it did come in tonight's game, just much like the game on Friday against the Suns, it was just in spurts. It wasn't consistent. There was really a lack of the Spurs coming out and setting up screens, going ahead and passing that ball, pick and roll action, pick and pops, getting people to move without the basketball. I saw a lot of isolation basketball again, especially in the crunch time. The Spurs, to get themselves back in the game, were playing great team basketball. They were sharing the ball. They kind of had the ball moving. They were finding the open man. They were knocking down shots. They were in the flow of what the offense basically what the defense was giving them, and they were in the flow of the offense, taking some really good shots, I thought. They got away from all that and just started playing iso ball. When you play iso ball, that's a bad mix for the Spurs. That means that it's not conducive to them winning when you play that way. You can't have one guy going up against the entire opposing team's defense. Bad things will happen, and that's exactly what we saw them doing. They would just have one person do an isolation play, whether it was Derek White, whether it was DeMar DeRozan. They would just put their head down, go straight into the rim, and they were just trying to pass the ball at the last second, and it was a turnover. Or they would miss a shot. They would take a rush shot, something that wasn't supposed to be taken. It was poor shot selection that was going on in that fourth quarter in crunch time. And it just bewilders me how that product can keep on being put out there on the court. At some point in time, we have to stop blaming the players for these shortcomings and actually look and start giving blame to the coaching staff. I'm not trying to come out here and call out Coach Pop and say this is his fault, but the coaching staff has to share some of this blame with this team, because we see them keep making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. Nothing gets corrected. We're already more than halfway through this the first half of the season, and it's still the same thing. It's still the same product. The product that we're seeing out there on the court right now, Wesley, is not going to win us 43 games. To me, that was the magic number to get into the 8th spot. It looks to me right now that the Spurs are probably going to wind up finishing the season, if they continue with their current trend, somewhere around the 10th or 11th seed. I don't really see them climbing up if they can't, you know, start tightening those things up. It's all the little things that have really hampered this team from succeeding and moving up further. I don't know what else to do as far as, you know, this team and rotations and putting in certain players. I just don't think the product's going to get any better. What do you think, Wesley?
Yeah, it's frustrating. And you know, I think the more time that we watch the same product, you said it best, it just, there's no rhyme or reason. I don't, you know, tonight's a great example. You know, Toronto, for all its intents and purposes, doesn't really have that much better personnel than the Spurs do. Yes, they have a young Siakam who's a good player. Van Vliet's a good young player. You know, they've got some good players and Powell and some others. But you know, we talk about it all the time, Joe, right? You say that, you know, hey, the teams can beat up on the Spurs because they got Brandon, they got Patty, and those are undersized dudes. Kyle Lowry and Powell and Van Vliet are tiny. You know, by that equation, they should be struggling. But there again shows what happens when you have a team mindset like the Raptors have versus what the Spurs have, which is a more individualistic mindset. And I think more often than not, you're right. You know, we see players not really knowing what they want to do with the ball and just trying things and getting stuck, and they try to bail out by jumping up in the air, which is a big no-no. Everybody who knows basketball knows that. And throw the ball back out to the top of the key, and it's just an easy turnover to catch and pitch. You know, you just, you know, you're not giving any kind of movement there. And what you saw tonight on the opposite end was you saw the Raptors, you know, drive and kick, and then the ball would swing all the way around the horn. There were times they got the ball out of Siakam's hands in the corner, the ball would swing into the middle, back around the horn, and then a lateral pass back to Siakam, and he was wide open. And to me, those are the kinds of plays you look at and say, even when the Raptors were losing, you knew that they were going to get back into the game just because of that kind of team ball. And we've seen that kind of ball played by the Spurs for years. We've seen that, you know, there's always a player on the baseline. You drive and you have somebody available, or that one person would pass up a shot for another shot, for a better shot. And, you know, we just don't see that enough. And you're right. When we do see them come back, we do see them have spurts of really clean basketball, it's when they're sharing the ball. It's when Jakob Poeltl is blocking him up the middle. And, you know, again, here's another guy who doesn't get enough credit because, quite frankly, most of the time the Spurs defense isn't up to par. But Jakob Poeltl is a beast. He is a force. And when he's in the game, this team has really good things happening. He helps those young players out there on the perimeter and covers up some of their mistakes. And Lord knows we know that they need it because they're not very good perimeter defenders a lot of times. And so, yeah, it is a lot of the same. And I got kind of, you know, chastised a bit for calling out the road trip coming up as a 2-6 road trip. But, you know, I'm just a realist. I'm not looking at things and being ugly. I'm not saying that I'm not a Spurs fan and don't hope for them to go, you know, 5-3 or 6-2. But the reality of the matter is right now, this team has not shown that they can win more than 2 or 3 games in a row. They're consistently about 5 to 6 games under 500. And, you know, anybody who knows anything about the Western Conference, you know, that's not going to cut it to be in a playoff contention. So, yeah, you're right, Joe. I'd say 9 to 11, somewhere in there, probably looking at a lottery pick by the end of the season. And, you know, maybe that's okay. Everything has to come to an end at some point. And so even if that 23-year streak goes away, it's, you know, it's part of life and part of what happens in basketball.
That it is. And just to read off some of the stats for tonight's game, we had some, I guess, game leaders here. One of them was going to be DeMar DeRozan. But, you know, reading off these stats and just looking at them, our starters really didn't perform up to par. I mean, they had double-digit scoring nights tonight, but they weren't in the high 20s. They didn't even break the 15-point mark. Our leading starter for tonight's matchup against the Raptors was DeMar DeRozan. He had 14 points on the night. Then you had LaMarcus Aldridge, who scored a total of 10. Trey Lyles contributed absolutely nothing. He laid an egg. He had 0 points on the night. He had 0 rebounds, and he had 1 personal foul. And his 6 minutes of play just goes to show you Pop wasn't really impressed. Maybe the matchup wasn't favoring him, but in those 6 minutes, he really didn't have any production. So it looks like he got yanked. DeJounte Murray had 13 points. Bryn Forbes had 13 points. Then the bench, you had Jakob Portal, who had 11, Derek White, who had 14, and Marco Beninelli, who had 12 points. Anytime you get any production like that out of Marco, it's always a plus. But I mean, let's face it, man, the guy just has decent games here and there. It's not consistent. I think that Coach Pop needs to make a change at the starting position, and he needs to pull out Trey Lyles and insert one Jakob Portal. I think Jakob Portal's earned that position already, because when he's out there on the court, he's very active on the defensive end, and he can also run the floor quite well, as we saw in tonight's game, where he had some driving layups, he had, some easy points in transition. So I think it's time for Jakob to be inserted into the starting lineup and Trey Lyles to come off that bench. Why Coach Pop refuses to do that is beyond me. To me, it's just maybe there's something that he sees there that we're not. But when you're looking at the production and you're looking at the numbers aren't lying. They're telling you that Jakob Portal is a better defender. And anytime you get any production out of him from the offensive end, it's always a plus. But I just feel like he's best suited in that starting lineup. He gives the Spurs a better chance to go out there and win games versus having Trey Lyles, who I haven't been really impressed with thus far into the season. So look, the Spurs are still going to have a lot of work cut out for them. Even like the team stats for tonight's game, I'll go ahead and read some of those numbers off so everybody can kind of gauge and see how the team did. Field goal percentage for the Spurs was 41.5%, 41.4% for the Raptors. Spurs connected on 34 out of 82 of their field goal attempts. The Raptors connected on 41 out of 99 of their field goal attempts. Three-point shooting percentage, that was in favor of the Spurs. The Spurs shot 43.2% compared to the Raptors shooting just 32% from beyond the arc. Spurs connected on the same amount of threes as the Raptors. Spurs connected on 16 out of 37 of their three-point attempts. The Raptors, they shot 50 three-point attempts, and they connected on 16 of those. Now, when it came to free throws, and the free throw shooting percentage was in favor of the Spurs, 91.7 versus the Raptors, who shot 80%. The Raptors went to the stripe 15 times, connected on 12 of those free throw attempts. The Spurs went to the free throw line 24 times tonight. They connected on 22 of those free throw attempts. So the assists, those were in favor of the Raptors, 31-27. Steals in favor of the Raptors, 11-5. And the stat I always look for, Wesley, points in the paint. Points in the paint, that was in favor of the Raptors tonight, 44-28. Fast break points were actually in favor of the Spurs, 17-12. So that goes to show you right there that the points in the paint were actually that was actually spelling the outcome of the game, meaning that the Raptors were able to get into the Spurs defense, into the interior, and knock down some easy buckets, whether they be dunks, alley-oops, bank shots, floaters, what have you. They were able to get to the rim at will. But that goes to show you that the Spurs defensive intensity was lacking this whole game. Now, that's the one part that they're missing.
Second chance points and do you have second chance points and rebounds in front of you? Because I think a lot of that in the paint was second chance points, honestly.
It was second chance points. I don't have the stat in front of me currently, but those second chance points, I believe, were really killing the Spurs, because what I saw was the Raptors being able to tip the ball, get in, people weren't boxing any of the Raptors players out, from the Spurs. They were just letting them go into the interior, get rebounds, and get another second and third chance opportunity to knock down a bucket. And when you do that, you're just killing yourself. It's just all those little things. When you combine all the little things that the Spurs are not doing consistently, they have, let's say, a snowball effect on the game. All these little things will compound as the game progresses. And then what happens? You wind up losing a game, even though you shot yourself back into it. At one point, you led by 8, only to go ahead and give that lead up and not be able to sustain it, because the Spurs right now, they're just their own worst enemy, Wesley. And again, it comes down to inconsistencies. They're just not consistent. And there's just really no easy fix for this. It's just bad habits and I think lack of communication out there. And how much of that actually is going to fall onto the coaching staff now, Wesley? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it should. I mean, I'm the first one on the bandwagon to say that, Greg Popovich is the first, coach on the Mount Rushmore. His face should be there ahead of anybody else's, even Phil Jackson or Red Auerbach. But at the same token, I mean, everything happens, and again, we've talked about the fact that assistant coaches from the Spurs staff have gone on to other things, and I feel like it's a younger staff. Becky's got a little bit more say on this staff now, but Tim Duncan's hasn't really had coaching experience before. I don't know really what he's providing for the team. To me, there is also just a disconnect amongst the players, Joe. I see lack of chemistry. Whether or not that's carrying over outside of the game, outside of and into their personal lives and what they do if they're kind of on their own. Who knows? I mean, we don't really know that. But they're just on the court. You don't see, that type of bond. When a team is close. We watch, like, a great example, Milwaukee. Milwaukee, before every game is a trip. They're a riot. They're sitting there pulling WWE moves out in the hallways before they come on the floor. They're just loose. They have, they just have a mentality of gamesmanship and team and just obvious they enjoy each other's company. And I don't know with the Spurs. It seemed like they had that last year. It doesn't seem like they have that at all this year. And I know people will say, come on, it's basketball. It's all about
the cohesiveness. They don't have their cohesiveness.
But if they don't have that, and that's exactly right, Jeff, they don't have that cohesiveness, it doesn't matter who's on the floor. It doesn't matter who their star player is or isn't. If they don't trust in one another and they don't play a team game, then obviously they have no chance of winning. So I do think some of it's coaching, but I really think a lot of it is just that this group of players, for whatever reason, they're just not fitting together.
Yeah, there's something going on there as far as chemistry goes that just isn't, the correct fit. So there are one or two players that maybe have to go, and hopefully they can rectify those issues in the off season. But right now, I just don't really see this team coming together and making a really big push to get into that playoff spot. And you got to ask the question. You got to ask yourself and be real with yourself. At the end of the day, as a fan, why would you want this team to make the playoffs? Just to keep with tradition? Because, I mean, let's be honest, if they make the playoffs, what's likely going to be the outcome of that? They're going to go in there and they're going to get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, and they're going to be sent home again. Yeah, maybe 4, maybe 5 games, but it's just not looking good for the team as it's currently, constructed, should I say. So some moves need to be made, no doubt, in the offseason, but some of the poor decision-making that the team has made thus far is really going to come back to bite them. One of those is they fully guaranteed LaMarcus Aldridge's contract for next season. We're still paying Paul Gasol $5 million, even though he's no longer with the team this season. We don't have Patty Mills' contract expiring until next season. And now they have to make a decision if they want to, in fact, keep DeMar DeRozan. What type of contract are you going to be able to offer him realistically? Because there's only so much money to go around,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
well, there's a lot of decisions.
On the horizon too, Joe, and that's Lonnie Walker. He's got one more year left on his rookie contract, right?
Yeah.
Next year, Lonnie at the end of the year can be a free agent, and with all the tie-ups that they have money-wise, that's why it is so important with what they do with DeMar, because you could be looking at a guy who we all feel like could be the franchise player for a long time to come. And I know people are frustrated sometimes. They want more of Lonnie, or they think he's not quite ready, or whatever the case may be. But even Kawhi, and yes, I said his name, even Kawhi in his first few years was inconsistent. And you see Lonnie and what he's going to be able to do. You see that, and you can see what's coming. But if they don't figure out in the front office what's going to happen with this team and the current core that they have, man, it really could challenge what the future is of this franchise with these younger players.
Yeah, that it could. So a lot of decisions to be made, so we'll just have to find out what this team is really made of. I'm just having no expectations. My expectations are set really low, so I'm not setting myself up for heartbreak and failure, with this team. If they make the playoffs, to me, that's already a win. If they don't, it's to be expected, so yeah. You have that. Well, before we go ahead and end the show, where can they find you on social media, Wesley, and engage with you?
Yeah, Facebook just Wesley Perkins, and of course Twitter at Wesley Perk. And just again lately, been talking a lot about what's going on with Spurs. A lot of talk, I think, especially about the free agent stuff that's coming up. And we all know they're not going to make a lot of moves. The Spurs don't ever make a lot of moves, but that's kind of what we're talking about. So yeah, I'd love to tweet with you a little bit.
Yeah, so make sure you go ahead and follow Wesley. Great follow on Twitter and on Facebook. And for all you need to know about following us, Two Shots Podcast, and also Project Spurs, you can go ahead and follow Project Spurs on Twitter, I believe, at Project Spurs, and also at Project Spurs Network. And for us, you can find all our social media handles if you just go to our website, twoshotspodcast.com. So for Wesley Perkins, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you for watching another episode of the Spurs Takeover. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind, we're out, peace.